Peter Wilding, Director of British Influence. Here we stand outside the bastion of European democracy, the European Parliament, and tomorrow the Supreme Court will rule if Article 50 can be triggered by royal prerogative or if the Parliament has to approve this. What do you think will happen? And if Parliament is chosen, do you feel this is there will be a rush on to get it sort of completed before the end of March, as May wants it to be?
Well, the general view is that the Supreme Court will decide in favour of the claimants in this case, and which means that Parliament will be given the vote on whether or not to trigger Article 50. Now, Theresa May believes that she wishes to trigger this by the end of March. The House of Commons and the House of Lords are essentially in agreement that they will not impede Article 50. So, whilst the Supreme Court will probably rule against the government tomorrow, it'll be a bit of a Pyrrhic victory, because Article 50 will be voted through by Parliament.
British Influence are talking about a 12-month notice period to leave the European Economic Area. Do you feel, Peter, that this is perhaps just delaying the inevitable?
No, because the European Economic Area is a totally different system than the European Union. In fact, the European Economic Area is a kind of greater single market, and it's governed by something called the European Economic Area Treaty. So our contention is that the government might well trigger Article 50 to get out of the European Union, but it has to also get Parliament, should the Supreme Court give Parliament the right to vote on Article 50, Parliament should also have the right to vote on whether to trigger Article 127, and that is a 12-month notice period for Britain to withdraw from the European Economic Area. And that's fundamentally different.
Do you think, Peter, do you think it was fair? Was it made clear in a fair way to voters before the referendum last year that Brexit would in fact take the UK out of the single market? Was the population misled?
I don't think it was clear. It certainly was not a question on the ballot paper. In subsequent polling, it's clear that whilst the public want to see greater control of UK's borders, the public also want to see free trade and the single market. In fact, in a recent poll, 90% of the public said they wanted to stay in the single market. Now, during the referendum, lots of things were said. Some people are saying, well, David Cameron said, of course, leaving the EU is also leaving the single market. But then the other side said lots of other things, like 350 million quid per week for the NHS. So there's nothing we can actually point to, either in the bill itself, which established the referendum, or indeed the referendum ballot paper itself, that the single market was a decision by the British people that needs to leave it. So it really is now up to the government to decide, not whether or not to stay in the single market, they've made that position quite clear last Tuesday, but whether it's right that they would chuck in the bin the European Economic Area Treaty, which is effectively a get-out-of-jail-free card. It is the perfect transitional arrangement if, as everybody believes, the 2-year period to withdraw from the EU is just impossible to fulfill.
Boris Johnson, our esteemed Foreign Secretary, says states are, quote, queuing up to do deals. Do you feel this is the case? And can the UK secure better deals outside the EU? Further, what are the chances of the new President Trump securing the beneficial deal for the UK that he promises?
Look, we've got a great deal already in the sense that the single market gives us access to the biggest free market bloc in the world. So the UK should think extremely carefully about withdrawing from that immediately at the end of the Article 50 process. We believe a transitional deal should be in place. Now, if it moves into the European Economic Area, it has the right itself, like Norway does, to negotiate its own trade deals. So frankly, the UK, if it plays its card right, has got the best of both worlds. Stay in the single market, albeit for a transitional period, but then negotiate its own trade deals. But two things. First of all, there are just preliminary discussions going on right now between the UK and other countries. And the second thing is, Trump has suggested that a free trade deal could be done with the United States, but we have no idea, either in the US or the other countries that Boris Johnson and Liam Fox are talking to, what the terms of those deals could be. And of course, that's the €64,000 question. We don't know. So we firmly believe that a bird in the hand, the single market, is worth two in the bush. Free trade deals, either with the US or other countries around the world.
Finally, Peter, I know the risk of asking perhaps a slightly facile question. How do you think it's going to go, really?
Well, it's clear where the UK government are heading. They're heading hardball. They believe that they've got more assets to negotiate with than the EU has. And of course, the problem with the UK is they'll come into the negotiations here and they will be asked to settle the bill for exit first off, before we even start the divorce negotiations and before we even start the trading negotiations. So my fear, and our fear at British Influence, is that the UK government will not be treated perhaps as well as it might be when the negotiations begin, because the EU are quite clear about this. The UK cannot get a deal which is better than the deal that the EU members currently get. And on that basis, then I fear that these negotiations are going to be very severe.